All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Graeme Watt. Graeme, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Oh, Kevin, so good. Nowhere else I'd rather be right now. This is awesome.
I'll tell you, I have been looking forward to this. I mean, this is a really cool because you and I have had conversation before, and then I got to invite you to one of these virtual roundtables that I host, and man, that was an awesome experience. And so I've really been looking forward to this podcast and stuff, and doing this interview with you. What I want to start off. I want to give a shout out to Tamara Thompson and the team over at Broadcaster Authority because they're the ones that introduced you and I. And without them, you and I may have never even met. And I
Hmm.
am Tamara. If you happen to be listening to this, I am like really grateful to you for connecting Graeme and I because just this short journey we've already had has been off the hook. It's been awesome, and so I'm looking forward to this conversation too. And so, what I want to do is, I just want to start. I want to turn it over to you so we can set some context and stuff. And I want you to be able to share about what you guys do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you guys are doing and the impact you're making in this world. And also give us some of the backstory. How did you get here? And
Hmm.
I know that's kind of a wide net, but I just want to give you some leeway to just kind of go and share from your heart what you feel led to share and stuff too.
That's a great question. I mean, I've spent years trying to distill down like what is it that we do, and not just professionally, but also like what do I want my life to be about? Because we spend a lot of our time for us as entrepreneurs, like building businesses. It can be an all-consuming thing, and so I want it to be worthwhile. And I want it to be aimed at something that is valuable and positive. So over the years, I've done a lot of different things professionally, but I think there's always been this one through line and thread attached to all of it. And now we've distilled it down to this concept of amplifying human flourishing. And so I want everything that I do, I want all of our companies to really operate in that way, that we are actively pursuing amplifying human flourishing in the world. So how can we make the world a better place? And whether that's a product company or our digital agency, whatever it might be, this is translating into like our family values and our home. And as I talk to my kids about what they're interested in as they grow up as well, like everything really comes back to that thing for us. So my brother and I have started all of our businesses together, and we have a portfolio company, and then our main operating company is a creative agency. And that's one of the big filters for us. Like whenever there's an opportunity in front of us, we ask ourselves the question, like, will this amplify human flourishing? And if the answer is no, then we don't do it. On the agency side, we even do that with clients. Like, will this client help us to advance our mission, which is amplifying human flourishing? So, our tagline for the agency is amplify good. And so we partner with organizations pursuing human flourishing to help amplify their impact online. And so whether those are nonprofits or social enterprises, we don't draw a hard line between the type of business necessarily, but it's really just, are they making the world a better place? Are they benefiting humanity in a positive way? And if the answer is yes, then we find ways to partner with them to help amplify the impact.
That's awesome. How did you, 'cause so you mentioned you and your brother have started all your businesses together.
Mm-hmm.
How were you, did you feel like you had entrepreneurial tendencies at a young age, both of you? I mean, how did you guys even get into doing this stuff?
That's a great question. I mean, he had way more entrepreneurial instincts than I did. He actually went and studied, business in university. I studied ecotourism and outdoor leadership. So I wanted to play outside with people. I've always been very adventurous and love the outdoors and rock climbing and paddling. And, I was a river guide and a rock guide for a long time and did that, kind of in the earliest stages of my career. And, I had a pretty pivotal moment for me that set me on a different trajectory, but I never anticipated that it would be entrepreneurship. And so it wasn't until I was actually operating in the nonprofit space and I realized I have this insatiable curiosity and I can't turn off this part of my brain that is looking at things and finding new ways of solving problems and thinking about what could we do and how could we innovate. I also live 3 years in the future at all times. And so that's just, and I always thought that everyone was like that until I grew up a little bit and realized that, oh, that might be a gift and something that's unique to me. and a certain personality type. But yeah, I'm kind of constantly peering into the future and going, where is this going, and what does it mean, and how can we anticipate what's coming, and how can we, do things that will either allow us to benefit from it or to create value as a result. So I've always had that wiring. My early stage of my career, like the first decade, was in the outdoor industry, but then I got married and moved to Edmonton, Alberta here, where there is no outdoor industry whatsoever. We're in the prairies of Alberta, Canada. And so there's, mountains and rivers are in short supply. So I was trying to figure out what to do. And I'd always loved working with students and working with youth. And so started working as a youth worker here in the Edmonton area. And that's really where the journey began for me. And I started, creating these experiments and these, opportunities for young people to, discover their gifts and talents and passions, and how could they use those to make the world a better place. And then through that kind of led me to more of an entrepreneurial path. So I actually started a nonprofit organization from the ground up when I was 26 years old. So
Okay.
I was working as a youth worker, and I had created an experiment with a group of teens that kind of took on a life of its own and became something more than any of us had anticipated. And then I ended up quitting my job and starting a nonprofit from scratch. So I remember being 26, 27 years old, sitting in my living room and Googling how to start a nonprofit organization, and then going through the whole process of, learning how to fundraise and build a board and hire a team and kind of grow and scale and lead in a new capacity. So leadership has always come very naturally to me, and so is communication. So I kind of have this unique ability to see the future, to cast a vision for a preferred future, be able to communicate it clearly to people around me that gets people excited and wanting to get involved, and then the ability to lead them, towards that vision as well. So I learned that early on. My brother, funny enough, had done the same thing in the nonprofit sector. So he graduated from business school, but then he actually became the director of a summer camp. And so he was kind of in that world. Um, Fast forward a few years for me, the nonprofit organization that I had started, we caught the attention of a much larger organization. And so we ended up transplanting and kind of merging our grassroots youth engagement organization into this large global NGO. And so I went from, the one of my mentors calls it going from the Zodiac to the aircraft carrier, but I went from, a small, nimble organization of 7 staff and just kind of, a small team to all of a sudden one of the largest NGOs on the planet. But it was during that time that I started coming up with all these innovative ideas, like I always do. And the organization that I was now working at, they had this innovation grant program. And so it was an internal process where staff members could submit proposals to get grant funding for innovation that would basically take the organization and capture value in new ways. And so I kept submitting these proposals. They kept getting funded. And then I would hire my brother, who had started the agency, to work with me on these projects. And so we ended up doing a bunch of projects together. And then the kicker was we traveled to Haiti together to film a mini documentary. And when we were flying home, we just kind of looked at each other and said, "This is way too much fun. Like, could we do this together?" So I ended up quitting my job and kind of leaving the nonprofit sector at that time, and jumped in with my brother, and we started the agency. We took it from the basement to now a full service creative agency that serves primarily nonprofit organizations.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So
I can't
how
help you.
long has the agency been in place then, Graham?
We just celebrated 10 years. So we've
10
kind of hit
years.
that magic milestone of 10 years in business, which, to think of that when we started felt like an eternity away. We never
Yeah.
thought we'd actually make it here, but
Yeah.
here we are. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's been very exciting.
Wow. So 10 years into running this agency, and I'm sure, you guys have grown so much along the way, and of course that growth and the opportunity just continue to unfold. Um, and you don't have to name names or anything, but and I'm sure you could come up with tons of examples of this, but what's an example of a result that you guys have helped get for one of your clients that you guys are just incredibly proud of?
Oof. I mean, there's so many over 10 years. I
Yeah.
would say the one that jumped out to me, probably the reason why it's so significant is because it was early on. It was in the early days, but we worked with an adoption agency that was local here in the province where we live. And, that's something that both my brother and I are incredibly passionate about. And, there's when you're in kind of marketing and creative services, you can sometimes wonder like, is the work that we do really all that impactful? Like, branding, for example, or, creating digital content or video and film work. Like, does it really move the needle for these organizations? And, I was, I think, insecure in some ways, and maybe somewhat um, unsure of whether or not we were really having the impact that we wanted to have. And like I said, this was the early days. It was just my brother and myself and a designer at the time, and we partnered with this adoption agency. And so we went through a whole renaming process with them. We rebranded the adoption agency, built a new website, built some video content, and kind of all new collateral for the organization. And this was kind of leading up to the end of the year. And this was the moment that to me was so poignant. And it actually was a milestone, kind of like landmark moment for me in the life of the agency and just kind of my personal belief in the work that we do. But um, we had talked to the executive director about running a digital ad campaign at the end of the year to help them raise more money at the end of the year. So the last, few weeks of the year tend to be where most nonprofit organizations raise the majority of their budget for the following year. And so, we'd said, hey, we'd love to run some ads. We created this beautiful kind of brand hero video for them. And we thought this would actually work really well as a digital ad. We'd like to run an ad campaign at the end of the year. And the executive director said, hey, we just don't have it in the budget. We don't really have the money. We're a small agency and a small organization. So um, we don't really have the budget to do that. And so I said, okay, well, let's get creative. Like, where could we repurpose resources from other places? And so we got really scrappy, and we looked at all their budget line items for the rest of the year, and they had a Christmas card budget. And she said, oh, yeah, we send handwritten Christmas cards to all of our adoptive families and all our volunteers and our donors. And I said, hey, what if we filmed just a very simple thank you video with you that we sent out by email instead of a handwritten Christmas card? How much of that budget could we save? And it was about $1,500. And so we ended up taking that $1,500 Christmas card budget, and then we put it into digital advertising using this video that we'd already created. And we launched that campaign, I think December 20th, right leading into the end of the year. I was on Christmas break with my family, and on December 27th, I got a call from our media buyer who was running the ads. And he said, Graeme, the ad campaign was shut down, but it was shut down on the client side. And so it means the client logged into their Facebook advertising account and shut off the ad campaign. And he was saying, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. So I called the executive director and I said, hey, what's going on? I hear you shut down the ad campaign. And she said, yeah, we're getting 15 to 25 phone calls per day to our on-call line from families who have seen our ads and want to inquire about the process of adoption. And that to me was a moment where I sat back, cried a little bit, and I said, this is incredible that we can create a simple 2-minute video and take a Christmas card budget and run some ads and have 15 to 25 families per day see that and consider adopting a child and bring them into their family. Like, it just was hard to wrap my head around that. So I think that's one of the stories that to me is a favorite, just because it shifted my own belief and perspective a little bit on the work that we do and the impact that it can have.
Yeah. Wow. What a powerful story that is. And, I think we can all relate to that, the second guessing ourselves and like, okay, am I really making an impact? Am I really valuable to someone else? Am I really making a difference, and,
Well,
and
especially when your clients are nonprofit organizations, right, that don't have big budgets, right? So it's like you feel such an intense level of stewardship over this. It was literally them saying, "This is all we have,"
yes.
and so we're going, "Cool, okay, well, we've got to do something with this," right? So you just treat it a little bit differently,
Yeah.
and making you want to make sure that you have some ROI on that for them.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. What a great story. Okay, we've done a really good job of setting some context here, and I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, and I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of our listeners. So, Graham, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, I mean, early on, it's really that's all I had. I didn't. I didn't have any track record. I didn't have any real expertise or experience in what I was doing. So there's two people. So you asked me this question ahead of time, Kevin, and
Yeah.
there were two people that immediately jumped to mind, and I knew right away, oh yeah, these are the two people, that for me professionally have had, a greater impact than really anybody else, and not just professionally, like personally as well. The first one is a gentleman named Tom Barakoff, and
Okay.
he came alongside me. So when I was 26 years old and started this nonprofit organization from scratch in my living room, um, I had no idea what I was doing. I was literally Googling my way through how to do this. And, I needed someone who could walk alongside me. And so I call him my fundraising Yoda, or my charitable Yoda. And he had spent, at the time, about 30 years in the nonprofit space and was running a very successful consulting firm, as a consultant to nonprofit organizations. And I was introduced to him through a designer that we were working with. So I had hired a designer who was doing some freelance work for our nonprofit, helping us to create some of our collateral. And I was starting to build a board, because to have a registered charity in our organization, you have to have a board. And so I was putting together my board, and so I was asking around, does anybody know anybody who would make a good board member that could help us? And Ian was our designer, and he said, "Hey, you've got to meet Tom." So he introduced me to Tom, and I remember sitting down and having coffee with him, and looked him up online and just kind of looking at his credibility and his experience and expertise, and I just thought, he's not going to want to have anything to do with a guy like me. Like, I have no clue what I'm doing. And we had coffee, and he was just so taken by my passion and vision and the ability to communicate it in a way that just got him excited. He immediately said, "I would love to chair your board if you would have me." And, so he became the chair of my board when the organization wasn't even really an organization. And we spent the next however many years of me leading that organization, just kind of with him being my sidekick and really my Yoda. I would go to him for everything. And he taught me just about everything I know about fundraising and about, how to lead a board, and how to, navigate governance, and how to navigate agency agreements, and all the different things that come with being a leader of a charitable organization like that. And so, fast forward now to us being a service-based business that works a lot in the charitable space. I have the ability to collaborate with Tom on so many projects, and we do a lot of capital campaigns with nonprofit organizations. So we are now actually hiring Tom often to come in and be our strategic counsel for these capital campaigns. And so we've now got the ability and the opportunity to link arms and run together and have impact in a new way together. And he continues to invest in me and in my leadership in profound ways. And I can truly say that the mark that he's left on me personally and on my professional career, and the value that we're able to bring to our clients, would not be what it is today if it wasn't for Tom.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. And there's such a huge lesson in there because, like you said, you thought, oh my gosh, once he finds out, who I am and how little I really know about this, he ain't gonna want nothing to do with me, But and what's interesting is that's, I mean, well, you've come a ways and you've definitely figured some things out, but you mentioned the passion piece, and man, that's what stood out to me too in a huge way, is that you are so doggone passionate about what you do, and there's no hiding it. And that is attractive to people. That is attractive, but that's attractive to investors. It's attractive to donors because they just know that people who are passionate are good stewards of what they've been given.
Right.
And so,
I think it's the single greatest competitive advantage when it comes to hiring and recruiting talent. So, my assistant just the other day reminded me of this. She said, "Graeme, the reason why we all work here is because of you. It's because of the vision that you have and the passion that you bring to it. And so don't discount that. Don't forget it." So it's one of those things that, like, I just realized early on, you know, I had the ability to do. I can't shut it off. It's who I am. And so I lean into it heavily, and it's served me well, when it comes to attracting talent, recruiting, working with investors, you name it. The ability to clearly communicate, a future vision with conviction and passion.
yeah,
Um, there are a few skills that are more valuable than that.
yeah. See, I know that because I think of, like, all the introductions that I've made over the years. And whenever I'm drafting up an introduction email, or that's how it is most of the time, via email. But sometimes it's via text message or even Facebook message. But whenever I'm drafting up that message to send to those two people, I'm just thinking about the possibilities and
Yeah,
what could come from this. And I just kind of get that. I don't know, I can't describe it, just that I don't know. I feel that energy just kind of running through my body. And whenever I feel that, I was like, "Ooh, I just know, oh, this is going to be good." And it's just man, I mean, I know there's entrepreneurs that are just, they're not like you and I, that they're not like as passionate as we are about what they do and stuff. And I have empathy for them, because I'm like, man, I wish they could have that passion, have what that feels like to get up every day and just do what we get to do in the world, and just make the
hmm,
impact we get to make. And like you said, just lean into just being us.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
When I think that's been one of my superpowers over the years is because, well, first of all, I'm like eternally optimistic, almost annoyingly so. And so my brother, who's
See,
my business partner, sometimes he's like, I need you to shut that part of your brain off because right now it's not serving us well. But the glass is always half full with me. It's always optimistic. We're always going to figure it out. We're always going to do the thing. And because I have this like deep rooted optimism, and I can also constantly be focused on the future and peering at it. To me, the future is always a beautiful, bright place. We're going somewhere wonderful. And the ability to sort of communicate that and get people excited about it and genuinely, truly believe it,
yeah,
has really been a superpower for me as well. And so it makes it pretty easy to get excited about your work when when you have a pretty clear vision and picture of like, oh, this is where we're going.
yeah,
And so it makes the ups and downs and the difficult times worth it because you can stay above the weeds. Like if you can constantly see the forest, then you don't get bogged down by the trees,
yeah.
and the valleys and the roots and those things as well. So that's definitely been a skill for me that I've had to cultivate, but it served me very well as well. And it does make it really easy to stay motivated and to stay excited, especially through difficult seasons.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know there's one more person that you want to talk about in honor too, and I want to make sure and give you time to do that.
Hmm. Yeah, the other person that jumped to mind, and I actually just got off a call with him before this, and so we're 15 years into our relationship, and he's still continuing to pour into my life in ways that just it's one of those things where like I could never quantify the value that he's brought to my life, and I could never repay him for it, and I'm so grateful to him. But his name's Michael Gibney, and his daughter actually worked for me. She was an intern when I was leading the youth and student engagement department at World Vision Canada. Um, his daughter was one of my interns, and got to know her really well. She was just a phenomenal young person, and just so excited and passionate. I was also running a coffee company on the side, and so there was a coffee company that I was running. We were sourcing coffee directly from Africa, and it was this kind of social enterprise that I was involved in. And her dad was also very involved in coffee and sourcing products from the developing world. And so she basically said, "Hey, I introduce you to my dad," and that was it. So I ended up when I was in Vancouver. Popping in and having coffee with him. And it was just, again, one of those moments that, you know, I felt like I didn't really belong in that conversation. But um, in that conversation, he saw something in me. And I still to this day, I've asked him, like, what was it that made you say yes to me all those years ago? And it just didn't make any sense. And still to this day, he says, like, I just knew there was this whisper in my soul that said, I need to invest in this young man. And whether there was some seeing of himself in me. Um, I don't know what it was, but he made a decision, because after meeting with him that first time, I was looking for someone to be a mentor to me on the business side. So Tom, that I just talked about, he's been a mentor to me when it comes to the nonprofit sector and fundraising.
Okay.
I was looking for someone who was going to be a mentor to me on the business side of things. And my list of criteria was fairly specific. And when I met Michael, I just thought, this is the guy. This is the kind of person that I want to learn from, and I want to kind of be a sponge and soak up all the knowledge that I can from him. And so I just asked him. I said, "Hey, would you consider mentoring me?" I had nothing to offer him. I had nothing to give, but he turned around and he said, yeah, you know what, I will. And but he put some conditions on it, which I actually love this about him. And this is, I think, a really good tip if you're one of the people listening and you're asked to be a mentor to other people. This is one of the things that Michael did that was such a gift to me. He said, I will do it, but he's like, I need you to know that my time is really valuable. And he said, I charge $900 an hour for my time. He's like, I'm not going to charge you anything, but I have some conditions. I will give you 30 minutes of my time whenever you need it, but you have to come to me with something very specific that you need wisdom and advice on, and you have to promise that you will never waste a minute of my time. And so he said, don't show up late and come prepared. And don't call me, don't book time with me if you just want to shoot the breeze. He's like, I will give you 30 minutes of my time whenever you want it, but don't waste a minute of my time, and be prepared. And that was 15 years ago. And we've gone through seasons. There was a lull there for a couple of years where we didn't really connect a whole lot. But then there's other seasons where he would give me 30 minutes, usually when he's in the back of a car, kind of traveling somewhere, and we would connect. And he's just been a steady, sound source of wise counsel and wisdom for me. And so every business decision that I've ever made has had his voice in it. If it was a major business decision, he's always kind of been in the background advising me. And I can say, genuinely in 15 years has never steered me the wrong way. And so, eternally grateful to Michael for the investment and time that he's poured into me. And I think I said this to you before we started recording, but he saw things in me that I didn't believe were there. And he believed in me when I didn't really believe in myself. And he was willing to, champion me when I wasn't really sure that I was worthy of it. And so, you know, I think everybody needs people like that along their story and in their
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah.
And what's amazing now is that I'm helping to advise him on certain aspects of, his business and new things that he's doing. And so I have expertise now that he's coming to me for, and I'm referring clients to him and he's referring clients to us. And so it's just become this really beautiful, mutually beneficial relationship. And even just now, we're launching a new product through one of our portfolio companies, and it requires patenting and licensing expertise and all of that. And he's basically like, hey, I will bring all of my team to the table and we'll help you navigate this. And he does it all kind of, um, just out of the goodness of his heart. So I'm super grateful for him, and he has impacted my business trajectory more than I can say anybody else, with the exception of my brother.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So, I'm sure you can come up with a number of examples to this question too, but I want you to, what is an example of a situation where you personally you got to make this really big impact, and maybe even in the moment, maybe it even kind of surprised you, like where you were like, wow, look at what just happened there. And yet you also know that that would have never been possible if not for your relationship with either Tom or Michael. What's an example of something like that, Graham?
Ooh, I mean, the example I just gave you is probably a really good one. Like, we our operating partner in one of our portfolio companies just came to us and said, hey, I've designed this new product, I want to bring it to market, but it's proprietary, and so there's a lot of sensitivity around it. It's a big opportunity, from just a business and revenue perspective. We're selling to a global market with a product that's a 3D printed product, which basically means it costs pennies to manufacture and the margins are out of control. And so he comes to us with this, and as partners in that business, our role is really to kind of bring a lot of the guidance and the expertise, and not just marketing experience and expertise, but also just kind of business expertise in general. And our operating partner is very much, he's the product development person. He's knows his industry very well. We're more the ones that provide business insight. And being able to bring this to Michael and saying, hey, Michael, I don't know how to navigate this. This is above my pay grade. We're talking now about international patent law. We're now talking about licensing agreements with large manufacturing partners. This is new territory. And him basically saying, hey, we'll walk you through every step. Not only that, but he says, hey, um, we've negotiated licensing deals with some of the biggest brands on the planet. We have sold intellectual property to one of the three largest companies in the world. we're going to be 3D printing this product. And he said, hey, one on in my invention company, one of my people there is like one of the leading experts globally when it comes to 3D printing. So we will come in and we'll just completely help to lay out the roadmap for you of how to go about this the right way, how to avoid all the pitfalls, save yourself a ton of headache and cost, and bring this to market in a way that's going to be successful. So I, I just benefited like 40 minutes ago. I was on the receiving end of that conversation where I came in feeling overwhelmed, feeling like, okay, this is bigger than me. And then within one conversation, having Michael be able to say, hey, we got you. We're going
Yeah.
to walk you through every step of this, and we've got everything that you need. The beauty of that is then we're able to then come back to our operating partner and say, hey, we've got the world's best when it comes to 3D printing. We've got someone who's filed over 90 patents and is going to be able to walk us through every step of the process. We're going to be able to get support navigating licensing agreements and, from people that have done this at the highest level that's imaginable. So yeah, I'm just feeling really grateful.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if that's exactly what you're looking for, but I've
That was brilliant, Graham. That was
just like
awesome.
literally, this is in real time, and so
Yeah.
that relationship, the value of just being able to call him up and say, hey, here's what's going on. And him going, I've got everything you need. Don't you worry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and how timely that you were just having that conversation right before we got on this conversation,
Yeah.
and what an incredible testament right there to the power of right relationships,
Hmm.
And it's interesting because right from the get-go, my goal for this podcast, it's always been twofold. It's been really simple. I wanted to give you, the guest, the opportunity to honor some relationships in your life that have been so valuable, and then for the listener, who they too are entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs.
Hmm.
I just want to use these stories to inspire them to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own
Hmm.
lives. And I'll tell you what, Graham, man, with your help, we delivered on that today, and we delivered on that in spades, man. And so
Oh, that's
I want to
awesome.
thank you for that.
Well, and I'll maybe give you one last piece, but because I think this really matters, and this is something we've experienced again and again, the work that we're doing. We're at the intersection of so many different things, whether it's, helping people get access to clean water, to helping, kids get adopted into families or foster situations. Like we're doing so much. And so often we find ourselves in situations where we're going, we don't know how to do this, or we're facing, these obstacles and challenges. We've just found that our commitment to pursuing human flourishing in the world has attracted to us so many incredible things and relationships, and the right people come along at the right times. And, whenever we need an expert in this particular skill set, whether it's an animator for a film project or, you name it, there's always been this commitment together with the people in our network who, because they deeply believe in what we're doing, and this is true of our staff as well, like we just put it out there and we say, hey, we need this, we need a relationship, we need some expertise, we need something very specialized, who knows someone who they can introduce us to. And that's never failed us, often. And actually, until very recently, we'd never put out a job posting for any of our hires. We've always just gone to our network and said, who do you know that is like this? We're looking for this kind of person. And inevitably, it's been like, oh, we know exactly the person that you should be talking to. And almost always that person ends up on our team and ends up being an incredible fit. So I think there's something really powerful about having a compelling vision and doing something that matters and is meaningful. And then, being able to invite other people into that. And it takes a village to change the world. And that sounds really kind of, cliche, but I think it's really true that we've just found relationships have shown up at the right time in the right place. And we've seen that, within our business, the agency, again and again. Mark and I, my brother, will sit down and go, we really need this person. And then 2 weeks later, or days later, we'll get an email from someone saying, hey, came across your agency, would really love to chat about opportunities. And we go, look at that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's just been something that's been consistent for us. And I think it's worth highlighting too, that, the right relationship at the right time can make all the difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, for anybody who's listening to this right now and going, man, Kevin, I really like Graham. I love who he is. I love how he shows up. And maybe they're even thinking like, man, you know what? It might be good to talk about talk about some of the stuff we're working on with those guys. Any
Mm.
websites, any resources we can share with folks?
Yeah, the easiest place for our operating company, the agency, is anthemcreative.ca. So we are
Okay.
in Canada, so it is .ca. But on the agency side, anyone who is doing work that matters, we specialize in branding, custom web experiences, and then we've got a film studio as well. So anything from long form documentary filmmaking to video series, all of that. We're stumbling into some proprietary partnerships as well around some new technology to bring digital storytelling through mobile to the market in a whole new way as well. So there's a lot of things that we're working on there. But yeah, if you're looking for a creative partner that really thinks outside the box and is
Yeah.
passionate about doing things that matter, anthemcreative.ca is where you can find all of that. And then if you wanted to connect personally, my LinkedIn would be the best place there. So it's
Okay.
Graeme Watt. My name is spelled a bit funny. It's Graeme. It's a Scottish spelling. So Graeme Watt on LinkedIn is the best place to find me there.
Awesome. And I'll make sure we include those resources with the show notes and stuff. Well, Graham, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today and just share from your heart. And I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. And I am
Mm.
just absolutely stoked to get this out there and share this with a lot of other entrepreneurs. And so thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I know like you're so generous. I think that's the part that I've been struck by. Every conversation that we have, you're focused on how can I bring value to this conversation? How can I add value to the relationship? And I think that's something that, I'm sure has served you well over time. But I think Gary Vaynerchuk talks a lot about this. If you give 51%, um, and you give more than you expect in return, then that's a winning formula. So I appreciate you the way you show up and the way that you're just committed to adding value through relationships. So thank you for yeah, connecting with me and having me on the show.
Absolutely. Well, you have a great rest of your day and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, you bet.